Voyage to another galaxy that is also far, far away. In search of a lost friend, Sabine Wren comes face to face with an old enemy. And now two brave chair-sitting nerds will break down the galactic spanning events. This episode contains spoilers for Ahsoka, episodes 1 through 6, Star Wars Rebels, Tales of the Jedi, Clone Wars, and the Star Wars films. Hi, I'm Peter.
And I'm Devin, and this is I Am No Jedi, an Ahsoka podcast. This episode's coming out a little bit later than usual because I was traveling, so today we will finally be discussing episode 6, Far, Far Away.
Worth noting, from our last episode, this is something we did not touch on. When Ahsoka touches the Purgle at the end of episode 5 and connects to it with the Force, it's kind of harkening back to when she was a baby in Tales of the Jedi and connects with the tiger that kidnaps her. So it's kind of a nice little touch that it's instead of being a warrior, she is getting back to what a Jedi is supposed to be about for her sort of roots, which really makes that whole journey she goes on with Anakin make so much sense. Have a physical demonstration that ties back to the beginning.
Yeah, I love that. I love that observation. And it's cool because so communing with animals through the Force is an ability that some Jedi have, not all do. But it's also an ability that Ezra has, so that's kind of a cool connection that they share. And it's also kind of cool to think about, part of the whole journey, like you said, that she goes on with Anakin in episode 5, being so much about that through the Clone Wars, it was the Jedi trying to make her into a soldier, and she was like, but I can be so much more than that. And so this is some of those things that are like you said, other meanings of being a Jedi that's not just about fighting and destruction and death and war. It's just communing with nature and animals and that sort of thing. So I love the idea of her getting kind of back to that, where she started point. Beautiful.
It's so nice because it's one of those things that you think Ezra might learn from her, but instead he's in awe of her because she's a badass warrior, because she was Anakin's apprentice in war, and he's got this curiosity, and he likes to collect things and explore or talk to people, and so communicating to animals through the Force becomes very natural to his Disney Aladdin becomes a Jedi sort of personality. So it's kind of like that, the learner becomes the master, master becomes the learner. They can still learn things from each other, sort of things. Even though he's not here to show her that, it is something everyone kind of knew he could do. So, I don't know. I like thinking about that parallel that is a little nuanced.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyways, in one sentence, Devin, now it's your turn to sum up this episode. What happens?
All right, so in this episode, Thrawn finally offers Vader some competition when it comes to dramatic entrances, and Sabine finds her long-lost friend with the help of some hermit crabs and a space puppy.
Space puppy.
How did I do?
I love that.
Does that pretty much sum it up?
That's great. Very... Oh, yeah. Excellent use of tropes.
Thank you.
Creative animal phrases. Hermit crabs. Yeah, overall impression, there was a lot of quality in terms of how they adapted so much stuff. There's a lot of world builds, Peridea has been mentioned, I think, in a lot of the legend books. The Night Sisters of Dathomir have been, a thing in Clone Wars for such a long time. And all of this is just a great, beautiful cinematic build on all these previous world builds. So very satisfying to people who've been following it. But the episode itself, when it ended, I was like, I thought there was going to be more. So it was great, but it was very short, and I just felt okay, so that was our very transitional episode. That was get ready for everything that's about to come next.
Yeah, that was very eloquently said. For overall impressions of the episode, I just wrote yay. So that was my overall impression. I was very excited about everything that was happening here. It was great.
You're just thrilled about the reunion.
I'm thrilled about the reunion. I'm thrilled about Thrawn. I'm thrilled about everything. I was just oh my gosh, yay this, oh my gosh, yay that. Um, I was surprised that I was actually surprised that we had so much Thrawn in this episode. So I remember we were talking a while back about like we made some predictions on like when we were going to actually get the reveal of Thrawn, and I was expecting it to be at the end of this
Mm-hmm.
episode. So the fact that he was introduced right in
Mm.
the beginning and we had a whole episode with him, I was surprised to get. Pleasantly so.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it makes sense because he's on it. So as
Mm-hmm.
soon as like guests are showing up to this part of the
Mm-hmm.
galaxy, and of course, when Ezra called the space whales in Rebels to take him and
Mm-hmm.
Thrawn away to another galaxy, he wasn't really aiming anywhere. You know, this just happened, and this is such a destiny sort of
Yeah.
planet. The way
Right.
they've set it up with the lore. So
Mm-hmm.
it is kind of interesting that it's like, oh, they would end up here and Thrawn would be setting up camp. I was like, yo, if they get to that other galaxy, that's a whole galaxy to look for them. But it's like, no, they're just at the first stop.
Mm-hmm.
They're just they're just chilling at the station.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
that's where the whales go. So that's where they get off, and then they can't go anywhere from there.
but is it always just between those two places? Is that, or is it that's just one of the
That's a
places they go?
good question. I don't know. I guess they have other stops on the way because they said this is the end of the
Hmm.
migration route. So I guess that's the final
Mm.
destination.
So North Pole, South Pole of the universe for
I,
whale
I
geese
guess I guess so.
traveling. Yeah, and Ezra and Ahsoka are basically just Jeff Daniels and Anna Paquin from
Uh,
Fly Away Home, just being like, "Let's ride the whale geese, and we're gonna
don't
make
bring up
it."
that movie. You're gonna make me cry.
Oh, yeah, fair, fair. We open with the Purgles flying through space.
Yeah, first of all, this opening shot with the Purgle traveling through hyperspace looks so freaking cool. Um, I was just like,
Gorgeous.
yeah, so beautiful. I love that it looks different from normal hyperspace. We're used to seeing like the cotton mottled blue hyperspace. This has like more colors. It's more like lightning a little bit. It's like it has a different look to it because it's like intergalactic hyperspace. Um, and it just looked awesome, and seeing the Purgle and like how they move, and it was just like a visual like spectacular. um I was just like immediately like, oh my god, yes, I'm in, this is awesome.
Which is also what a relief, because with everything that's been going on in Hollywood over the
Mm,
past couple of years and at Disney,
mm,
let's not lie, like I totally expected this to be something that
mm,
was phoned in, like
mm,
hyperspace lanes, and not necessarily phoned in, but like
mm,
rushed. And this does not look like a product that
mm,
was rushed. So whoever, if it was, I don't know if it was Filoni, who it was, whoever was able to advocate for, give us more
mm,
time, motherfuckers.
mm.
Great job. I hope to be you someday.
So then we have this short scene in the cockpit with Ahsoka and Huyang. This is all we see of Ahsoka for this whole episode.
People were complaining about that. I saw online. They were like, an episode where she's in it for like just a minute. I'm like, the show is a big
Yeah,
movie,
exactly. And
essentially.
like the pacing works out well, I think. Like I was like, oh yeah, we only have like a couple minutes of Ahsoka in the show called Ahsoka.
There are episodes of Lois and Clark that are just about Jimmy
Yeah,
Olsen.
I mean,
Like
the last
it's
week's
like,
episode was like all Ahsoka. So like,
yeah,
and we had no Sabine. So we're switching back over, and like that makes more sense for the pacing than like if last week we'd had half Ahsoka and half Sabine, and then this, like, it would not have worked because we needed that whole episode to tell Ahsoka's story with her journey with Anakin and everything like that.
someone was saying they forgot about intercutting, between scenes. Like this is happening over here. Now this is happening over here, and I was just like, yeah, I don't
No,
want that for this. Why? Why would I want that? Would just
yeah,
no focus on what's happening for this character, then this character. They're not like kind of in the same place trying to achieve the same goal on
right,
different
and
fronts.
it's
They're both going through a
yeah, and
different journey.
it's not a soap
Like,
opera where you have to be like, now we have to go over here and check in with this storyline. Like, it's just not built that way. And like we were already kind of not complaining, but like, in episode 5, being like, I just want to see Ahsoka and Anakin, and it keeps cutting back over to like Hera and Carson Teva. looking for her. It was part of it, but even with that, we were like, yeah, I understand that we have to do this, but I really just want to see what's going on with Ahsoka.
Yeah, 100%.
But
But like I gave them a
exactly,
pass
it was
because
part of it, and it was relevant to what was going on with Ahsoka. But I definitely wasn't being like, show us what's happening with Sabine. I want to know. I'm like, I know that they'll get to it, but I was like so in that moment with Ahsoka and Anakin. I'm like, this is all I care about in the world right now.
it honestly just annoys me because it's like people want to like come up with a reason to
Yeah.
like nitpick anything, and I'm like, that is literally a creative choice
Mm-hmm.
that worked. It's been done a million times before. Like, okay, remember when people were like, oh, there was an episode of Game of Thrones that came out in season 4 that was only at the wall. It was all one battle. And that's one of those drama shows that is constantly cutting between characters and their different journeys that don't necessarily have anything to do with each other every episode. And then one episode was just a battle at the wall, which was really epic. And everyone was like, that was so cool. Can you imagine intercutting? And now let's cut to Jaime Lannister as he pines for his sister.
Right, like that seems like
right in the middle of...
Yeah.
No. Like, what was happening to Ahsoka was incredibly intense, and now what's happening to Sabine is like, let's stay in this mysterious across the galaxy. Let's see if Ezra's here after, like, I don't know if it's 6 years for her, but it's been... Rebels ended, like, what, 2017? 2018? So it's been... For the fans, it's been almost 6 years, too. We're like, this is exciting.
Yeah, and it has...
We're finally seeing a
payoff.
payoff.
At least, like, probably between 8 and 10 years for them in universe.
It's also funny that you said it's not a soap opera. It's really funny you said that, because earlier this week, I said it's a soap opera. But in a good way, I was trying to essentially point out there are big moments in these characters that if you haven't seen Rebels before, they feel wooden. I'm retreading. I've said something like this before.
I did. As I was saying that, I was like, I think you have said that on the show before.
I feel like there's this trope where anytime any character is in a hospital, in like a comedy TV show or something, they're like, you gotta get me out of here. I'm stuck watching soap operas. And then they're like, wait, I don't know what's going on. They're on episode like 500 something, but something really intense is happening between the butler and the sister's fifth cousin who is minding the pool. And I can't tear my eyes away. And it's just like...
I got so hooked on General Hospital when I was in like middle school. Yeah.
You did?
I was like 13 and we were on a family reunion with all my cousins and stuff at the beach. And my cousin and his wife were like super into General Hospital, and I really liked them. I wanted to hang out with them all the time. And every day at 3:00, they would like go up to the house from the beach to watch General Hospital, and I would go and watch it with them. And after like a week of watching it, I was super sucked into like all these characters' drama and everything. And when I got home, I had to keep watching it, and I kept watching it for like 2 years.
Okay, did you go back and catch up on stuff you missed and be like, oh, that's why these moments were so intense? 90s,
so there was no way. And this was in like 2002, so it's not like I could like find it online anywhere. But I would if I couldn't catch an episode, I would like have to have my parents record it on VHS for me so that I could watch it so I wouldn't miss a week.
But that is the vibe. It's about intense moments. I think that's the one thing George Lucas kind of got that nobody else did, because he's made it so it's like Star Wars is episodes. Episodes. That's for TV. That's what that is. No one was calling movies episodes before. And granted, that was a change they made before the prequels came out, but still, that's literally
true.
acknowledging
Like, that?
not 1, 2, and 3, just episodes. It's like he kind of knew this was a drama. Like, it wasn't supposed to be wooden dialogue. It was just supposed to resonate. And he's like, it's for kids, so keep it simple. But, like, there's a lot of weight behind, like, the reunion of Ezra and Sabine, and that might read as wooden to somebody who doesn't know anything, but it also might, if you're coming into it for the first time, you might be like, this is kind of intense. Like, a little bit.
So they're talking about Sabine, and Ahsoka is all upset because Sabine, went with the enemy willingly and gave them the map and all of this stuff, and she's like, she could have ended this. And I was like, as we discussed this week, like, I don't know if she could have. Like, we talked about that. Like, she didn't really have the means to destroy the map before they destroyed her.
Yeah, probably not. She
Yeah.
wouldn't have been fast enough. It's good that Ahsoka's conflicted
Yeah.
still, you know, because it's like she went through that. She kind of sorted out her own conflict, but she's still like, how do I make this better? That's nice and kind of
Yeah, and
realistic.
she's like, she's doubting herself. She's like, oh, I didn't have time to prepare her to make the right choice, and thinking about how she's, teaching her and stuff. And obviously, I love how Hu Yang's story starts with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. That was just a great little like nod in there. It was a cute touch. And this, ties in with what Balin's going to talk about later in the episode, but like it's circling back to the beginning. It's like, cycling back to how it all started.
It's so sociologically observant though, because for him he's like Jedi, Sith, Republic, Empire. They constantly just kind of take turns, and I'm like, that's our world too. So Balin is angling to be another Game of Thrones reference. Daenerys, the wheel breaker. I kind of like that vibe. Obviously he's not. He's no Queen of Dragons, but I like that he's like that's his mission. It's not winning. It's changing the game. It's a cool little soliloquy he gave us. Let's do Peridia. Yeah, I didn't know it would be tied to the Dathomir witches so closely. It really pays off everything Filoni's been building for like the past 15 years.
It's super cool. It's the ancient homeworld of the Dathomiri, which I've been so thirsty for any backstory or context about the Night Sisters, like since they first appeared in Clone Wars. So like any little bit of information or like context or backstory that we can get, I'm super excited for. So this is like gems of context. We also learned that the Dathomiri were the first to harness and ride the Purrgil, quote, in the days before time was counted. So like long time ago. And then we also learned that this is the end of the Purrgil's migration route, that they come here to die, and that it's a graveyard, which, by the way, the big ring of bones was very dramatic and cool, but like their bodies wouldn't decompose in space.
Just decompose wouldn't be the right
word. They would just be like frozen whale.
Like,
it would be a ring of frozen whales, and not just like bones. Like what happens to all the flesh.
These are like living beings that are able to exist in the vacuum of space. So it's like, how do the rules of science and space work on that? Because if a human goes into space, it's not just that space is cold. Everyone says you freeze. It's more your blood vessels are sucked apart. You're sucked apart by the vacuum of space. Maybe slowly, fast. I don't know. There was some horror movie in space I saw once where they're like, close your eyes. And I was just like, oh, I don't even want to Google like how legit messed up that would be what they're talking about with that concept there. But with a space whale, it's like, okay, so fictionally, you are organic material that is not ripped apart by the vacuum of space. So what does happen when you just die?
Enough.
Like, what's the difference? Like, would you just be floating and decompose normally, like if a dead body was just on Earth? Or is there some other sort of thing that happens?
So what you're saying is don't try to apply my limited human logic to the physiology of intergalactic space whales?
I guess I'm saying no logic works because they're space whales.
That's fine.
They're space whales. Like, there is no logic. Yeah. I started thinking about it very seriously. I wasn't even trying to poke fun at the logic. And then I was just like, I guess this conclusion we've come to is it's fiction. Like, there's no science we can work out with that one.
Your Honor.
Yeah. If there are any, like, people that work at NASA who are listening for sheer amusement, please put in the comments, how would a space whale work according to science? Because no one else has any idea. I'm sure that the answer is just they would not.
They wouldn't.
There cannot be space whales. Yeah, well, life cannot live in space.
I don't want to know that, though, so if that's the answer, don't tell me.
I like to believe it could happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Stuff we can't imagine. It's possible.
So we meet the, and they call them the Great Mothers, which in Clone Wars we have Mother Talzin, so I guess these are all on sort of the same plane as as Mother Talzin, I suppose. But what was really cool
Hmm.
that I was excited to hear was they have the same like double voice sound design as Mother Talzin in Clone Wars, um, where they have kind of her speaking and then sort of this like lower, almost like demonic voice underneath it, speaking kind of at the same time, like a little bit off. So it's kind of like an echo. And it's just this really cool, really creepy effect, showing that there's like this real, like ancient dark power behind their words.
Yeah, I'm glad they kept that in live action. It's such a cool
Yeah, it
effect.
was just, yeah, it was so powerful when it was done in Clone Wars. It was so cool. And so I was just like really excited to hear it again here.
We saw Balin and Shin in
Yeah.
that, so this was just an aesthetic note that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Um, about Balin and Shin when they were on Peridia, and I
Mm-hmm.
was just looking at their armor, and we've already seen them
Mm-hmm.
in their armor before, but between the massive statues we saw,
Mm-hmm.
this desolate but kind of lush, yet
Mm-hmm.
still desolate because it's kind of like an ancient planet land.
Mm-hmm.
This planet gives me vibes of the planet where the Power Rangers get their powers back in Mighty Morphin the movie back from
Oh,
1995.
dude.
Totally gives me that
I
planet's vibe.
love that.
Also, I know you haven't watched the Battlestar Galactica remake
Uh,
that was incredible, but their planet Kobol, which disappointed me by being just based on like Mormon stuff, but like they had a planet
okay.
where they're like, oh yeah, this is the planet where our gods used to live and made us, and then we all left it like thousands of years ago. Like it gives me Kobol vibes too. So I'm just like,
Hmm.
did they shoot this in Canada? Probably. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But it, it definitely has like that kind of vibe. Seeing Balin and Shin there with their armor, I was like, okay, we've made Star Wars feel like a Western.
Mm.
We've made Star Wars feel kind of like Aladdin with Ezra. We've made Star Wars feel like what's another vibe that it's felt like very Indiana
Mm-hmm.
Jones. It's felt like that
Mm-hmm.
explorer sort of thing. A lot in the back
Mm-hmm.
half of Rebels. It felt very Indiana Jones,
Mm-hmm.
scattered throughout, really.
Which makes
Which
sense. Yeah.
they own Lucasfilm, so
Yeah.
it makes perfect sense. It really does. But those are all
Mm-hmm.
different vibes that they've kind of captured seamlessly, and I'm like, now there's kind of a
Yeah, it's
medieval
kind of
vibe.
like a King Arthur, Knights of the Round Table kind of vibe,
Yeah,
which is
and
cool.
it was specifically looking at their armor and the
Yeah.
fact that you pointed out Balin fights like a
Mm-hmm.
knight um, in his
Mm-hmm.
fight scenes that made this seem much more
Mm-hmm.
epic. And I just wanted to kind of praise the fact that when they world build, they're also switching between
Yeah.
themes and vibes that really work.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
So,
I love that. Then we have this the first of two really great scenes with Balin and Shin. This is where he first starts talking about this cycle of the Jedi and the Empire and the war and the killing and different people coming into power and then losing the power and so then Shin is like, oh, it's gonna be our turn now, right? Like we're gonna come into power, and he's like, no, that's that kind of power is fleeting, and this is what I seek as the beginning, so I may finally bring the cycle to an end. Um, so I'm just like so curious, like what does that mean? Like there's so many I feel like there's so many different things that could mean. Um, and I just want to know like what's
mhm.
going on in his head, what's his plan, what does he see happening?
Yeah, it's cool because when someone says they want to go that big, if they haven't already really given a lot of hints as to what
Mm-hmm.
that would be, all you can do
Right.
is speculate. And I'm glad that I don't know more. It's kind of cool just to be like, that's the direction. Because even in my example of the other person who's like, I'm gonna break the wheel as Game of
Mm-hmm.
Thrones, her whole idea was still just win,
Right.
which was such a flawed way of thinking. Just, oh no, everything will change when I'm in charge. I will just do better. I just have to conquer everyone
Right.
first. Literally, that was her strategy, which is just like, yo, you do seem dope, so you go, girl, but you haven't really broken the wheel in terms of a new thought pattern
Right.
at all. Like, this is not a
Hmm.
new idea.
Then we see Sabine in her prison cell trying to use the Force again, when Thrawn arrives, and I just love how this scene is done. How she's she's trying to use the Force to open the door and everything. The wall starts shaking, and she's like, "Oh my god, I'm doing it!" And then it's like, "No, that's Thrawn."
I love that they're just trolling
I know.
people who just like actually think that should be a thing. They're like, no, it's
I
not
know,
gonna
and
be
it
a
keeps
thing.
like I keep getting scared every time that they're actually going to do it, because as I've talked about many times before, I don't want that to happen. So
no,
it
it would be
would,
bad writing.
and it would like really detract from what they've done with her story so far. So like, every time they do that, I'm like, oh, please don't, please don't, please don't. And so like the stuff starts shaking, and I was like, no, 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 don't do it, don't do it. And then you see the Chimera, Thrawn's flagship, come up out like over the thing, and I was just like,
I was thrilled.
yes,
I was like,
it
that's.
was
I was like, that's
so
right.
good.
It's something else.
And to have like that, just the way that like tension is built, to be like, oh, I really don't want it to be that, and then like, oh, it's something else good, and it's the Chimera, like, was just like a lot of emotions all at once.
It checked a lot of great boxes. Like, are you worried we're... It's just funny that they add in the emotional box to check of, are you worried we're gonna do a shitty thing that Disney's been doing with Star Wars for all these years?
Yeah, we see the Chimera arrive. Oh my god, dude, it looks so awesome. And seeing it go over, and so like he's got this really sick design like on the underneath of his Star Destroyer, that's like very iconic. It's on the cover of the newest trilogy of books that came out.
It seems like a ballsy maneuver, though, to be like, let's stick the Washington Monument up our spaceship's ass and just park there and just hover. Like, I'm just like, yo, if anybody accidentally, like, is turning around and their jacket gets caught on the joystick, like, you're gonna break the spaceship in half. It's... Yeah. It looked so cool. But, like, the part of me that is practical was really bothered by it.
I can see that.
I'm not mad at it as a creative decision. I was just thinking, I was just like, just Thrawn wouldn't do this. This is strategically horrible. Like, that's your only spaceship on that planet? Like,
but it's so dramatic.
If anybody didn't check like the gas... If anybody didn't check the gaslight, like, right before that, it's like, okay, well, that thing just goes through the spaceship. Like, stupid.
Yeah.
It was really cool, though, to be like, we're going to bring this area into the hangar bay. Looks so cool.
Yeah.
Looks so cool. Forget about my joke.
And the ship, like, the first couple... when they disappear in Rebels, it's like, the Purgils did a pretty good job of fucking up the ship. Like, they broke all the windows, wrapped around, like, they've been kind of destroying it. So it's like,
That's a good point.
how they doing out there? So clearly there must be some sort of gold, like gold must be in abundance on this planet, because they've somehow gotten all this material to fix up the ship. And I imagine that the Great Mothers helped a lot with that. I also noticed gold is a big Morgan Elsbeth is really into gold too. You see that in her aesthetic and her gold shuttle that came down to the planet, which was really cool looking. And on their hyperspace ring, it's kind of been like a motif of hers already. And it made me realize that like there's not really been a ton of gold in Star Wars. Like there's C-3PO and there's like, there's some gold, and you've seen it in like the Naboo Royal Court and some things like that. But
I was gonna say in the prequels, like Naboo stuff can be gold.
But that's for the most part, like Imperial stuff is like silver, black, gray, and Rebel starships are also usually variations on like silver, black, gray, with some more red or like painted in certain ways and stuff. But gold has not been utilized a lot.
To me, it felt reminiscent of like a lot of like art I would see drawn in like Star Wars comics when I was growing up, or like some video games like maybe KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, which I'll admit I didn't play, but like the aesthetic of going gold to a desolate planet, I don't know, it felt like ancient Star Wars a little bit, like in their lore.
Okay, so listen, because Dave Filoni is a goddamn genius. Okay, we have the Chimera, and then we see the Stormtrooper Legion that Thrawn has, and they look so fucking cool. And they've got this like destroyed and repaired armor, and it's tied up with like the red fabric, and it's all broken and filled with gold in these places. Like the ship was repaired with gold, and all these stormtrooper, the helmets and everything have all these gold things. This first thing I immediately thought of is there's a Japanese art form called kintsugi, which is the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. And the symbolism of it is that it embraces the imperfections as part of the object and its history, rather than discarding it or trying to hide the repairs. So the idea is that through the process of repairing it, it creates something even better than before it was broken. Like how Thrawn wants to take this broken remnant of the Empire and build it into something better than ever before. Brilliant. Freaking brilliant. I just think that was so cool. It looked awesome. And the because we've seen a lot of Japanese influences in this so far, from the music to the the samurai style and a lot of things like that. So tying in this art form in a really, really symbolically brilliant way, I was so excited about it.
What did you think of, speaking of things that were gold, the Star Wars trooper with a face?
Yes.
Enoch.
He's there.
He is there. Yeah. My first reaction was, as soon as we got and here's my first in charge, Enoch, I was like, okay, I thought he just was one with a cool helmet, but now you've given him a name. You monsters. What have you done to the fandom? You just killed Marok, and now we got Enoch. And they're just going to play this stupid game over and over again. Oh, Enoch is Ezra. No, he isn't. Thrawn brainwashed him. It's stupid. It's just another stormtrooper with a helmet who is a senior officer. I'm good with that. He's being played by Wes Chatham, who is from The Expanse and plays such an awesome character named Amos in that show. So knowing that they got to get to play him says maybe there will be something to that. It's just round 2 mini boss. That's how I feel about it.
I don't really have anything to add to that. I was concerned for a hot second when I was like, don't tell me this is going to be Ezra, but
rooting against it, very happy that they immediately nipped that in the bud this episode.
I was concerned.
But on good notes, which that's not a bad note, because they did that right. They did that right.
This was a hypothetical bad note of how bad would it have been if they did this thing that they didn't do. Lars Mikkelsen's Thrawn voice is just so iconic. There's just absolutely no way they could have cast anyone else to play him.
There was some back and forth on that in the pre-production.
I do, and I remember there was kind of, it was really like, oh, who's it gonna be? There were some other names thrown around that I think could have been good, like, and I don't know how many of these were actually seriously considered, but or just like fan casts, but like, Jason Isaacs was thrown around, who I think would have been really cool, but there's just no substitute.
That's the only other person I could imagine. That's the only other person I could have imagined doing it.
Me too. I think that he would have done well. He already
lends his voice to Inquisitor.
True.
Yeah.
In Rebels, like Thrawn's voice, it's just so unique, and the affectation that he has and everything, that like Lars Mikkelsen just really like added so much to his character through the way that he acted him, and they gave him such an absolutely badass opening line.
Remind me what it was.
What was first just a dream has become a frightening reality for those who may oppose us.
Oh.
Great line. So good.
Chills, yeah.
And to have him just like walk on super confidently and like deliver that line in that iconic voice, I was just like, oh my god, Thrawn is real. Like, this was...
Every time he spoke, it gave me chills, because like he was like so Shakespearean and like controlled in Rebels. Like, you watch his character in that show and you're like, yeah, this is next level. Like, what is it? Balin tells him, he's like, I brought along Sabine Wren. I thought she could be useful to us. Yes. She will be very useful. I'm just like no one... Thrawn imitations are going to be a thing in the future, is, the way Joker ones were. If they're not, it's a missed opportunity, because how chilling,
Yeah.
It's like, what, people are going to imitate Patrick Bateman before Thrawn? Like, if you're going to be into a psychopath, be into the one who has, like, the best winning streak there
and
is.
Thrawn is such a good, he's such a great villain, and he's so compelling, especially as a counter to Vader, who is just all like rage and wrath and emotion. And Thrawn is just like the very cool, logical, analytical.
We've seen them both do a little of both. Like, we did see Thrawn make a mistake at the end of season 3 of Rebels, when he kind of went in and didn't predict that they had some surprise factors for him. But he was super analytical, and he was crushing them the whole time if they hadn't gotten lucky. Vader at the beginning of season 2 showed that he'd learned a few strategy things. That it's like, let's not be wasteful. Let's anticipate their movements and just trap them. And he's done stuff like that, I think, in the movies too. Like when he figured out where Han Solo was going to be, delegated to Boba Fett. I like that you pointed out he's all rage, Thrawn's all evaluation. I think those are their strengths, and it's like Vader is the person on your video game team who wants to be hands-on, who wants to rush the enemy. He doesn't want to wait around. He wants to fight. He's
so like, one of the things in the original Thrawn novels, and I know I said I didn't have anything to pull in from the Thrawn novels, but I'm going to go back on that. But it's not a spoiler.
Spoiler alert!
It's not.
This episode also contains spoilers from the Thrawn trilogy novels by Timothy Zahn. Okay, good. We've covered our asses. We're good.
Thank you.
You can proceed.
It's not really a spoiler, but one of it does draw a distinction between their leadership styles. Like kind of early on in the first book, one of the deck officers like makes a mistake and like totally expects to get just murdered, because that's how Vader deals with mistakes. They hear all these stories about like, oh, if you make a mistake, like Vader's just gonna like force choke the shit out of you. And so that's kind of how they just expect to be treated. And Thrawn doesn't do that. He's like, he comes over and he's like, oh, well, what happened? And they're like, oh, this happened, and I didn't, there wasn't anything I could have done. And they're like, well, can you think of anything else that you could have done? And they're like, no. And they're like, all right, well, I'm going to put you in charge of figuring, like, well, you did the best you could in this circumstance. I'm going to put you in charge of like figuring out how we can address this next time it happens, if the rebels do this again. And just kind of like, and he's like, oh, all right. And so he leads very much from a like, he's not just going to like murder someone from making a mistake. He pays attention to like building on what people know and helping people succeed. And that's what makes his leadership style so effective, and it's what makes his the people that serve on his ship so loyal to him. And that's kind of a big theme of that trilogy of books, is that like he builds really, really strong loyalty because of his leadership style, because he's actually...
I don't feel like we saw this in
No,
Rebels.
this isn't...
They didn't really focus on
that
aspect of him at all.
This is an aspect that is in the novels that wasn't really translated into Rebels, is that he's actually an amazing leader.
That's a good boss, what you just described right there. I'd be Team Empire if like they were gonna like pay my bills and I'd report to Thrawn. It sounds like a very stress-free
that's their sort of thing. And so that's what makes him such a, one of the many things that makes him such a cool villain and such a cool character is like he's just really, really good at his job, and like the people who work for him want to work for him and want to succeed because he's a great leader. Like he just happens to be on the side of like the evil empire, but like he's a really, really good leader.
It's weird that it's just like within that company though, because I feel like if you're working right for the Emperor or Darth Vader, it's like Waystar Royko sort of like toxic looking over your shoulder, am I gonna die sort of employment, whereas it's like, oh, have you switched into Thrawn's department? Dude, it's like working at Riot Games.
Yeah, no,
you're gonna
exactly.
love it. It's so chill. Like they have nap pods in the Star Cruiser. That sounds so nice.
So I think that Dave Filoni here is doing a really good job of bringing in both. Like he's continuing the character from Rebels, but also I think injecting some more of the characterization from the novels that may not have made it into the Rebels adaptation. I also
Yeah.
really like that he was asking for, and this was a big part of Rebels, which was also really cool, but it's such a big part of Thrawn's character and what his strategy and everything is studying art and studying culture. So when he learns that Ahsoka is coming, or he's just assuming it's Ahsoka, and his assumptions are always correct because he's Thrawn. But he's like, I want to know everything about her. I want to know about her people, her planet, her master, like all of these things. Because that's what he would do when he's going up against a new enemy or an old enemy. Like he will study their artwork, the artwork of their people, the artwork from their homeworld, and garner from that all the information that he needs basically to defeat them. What are their weaknesses? What are the...
To defeat your enemy, you must know them.
Good. Your Thrawn is getting better.
He said that, like, I wasn't really trying to do it there, but like that was his I felt like that was a recurring line.
Yeah, that's pretty much his whole ethos. And that was a really huge part in the books as well. Is like, you know, people would come into his room there and he'd be just like staring at some sculpture, some piece of art and stuff, and they're like, what you got there, buddy? And he's like, oh, I'm gonna learn how to, you know, defeat them, you know, oh, we're going up against Admiral Akbar, whoever it is, and so I've got all this Mon Calamari art and I can tell from, and I forget, you know, example of whoever it is, but he'll be like, oh, I can tell, you know, because of the way these brush strokes are, that they're really hesitant and, you know, easily deterred by, you know, whatever. So he can kind of garner like what their weaknesses are, or what their tendencies will be in a certain, like, oh, if I do this, they'll react in this way because they are, you know, easily frightened by this such and such a thing, or, you know, any number of those sorts of things. So,
and he did it to Hera too, in Rebels when he was taking over her planet. So here's a question, because I did not go back to check. I wasn't 100% sure on this, but did he have like an encounter where he captured Sabine and talked to her about her artwork? I know Sabine talked with the high priest character played by Malcolm McDowell towards the end of season 4, but I don't know if she had a scene where she was kidnapped by Thrawn ever.
I think that she did, but I'm having a hard time recalling it right now, because I think I have a memory of, because I know that Thrawn has collected some of her art, and I feel like I remember him talking to her about it at one point, but I can't remember exactly when.
Yeah.
It's not in an episode that I've rewatched recently.
It also could have been he was just observing her art after the fact. So I was wondering if, like, because he says an old friend, and it's like, yeah, he knew she was part of the leadership of the rebel insurgents he was after, but I don't know if they talked. But like their scene, like they know each other, that playful "you again, you shitty enemy," like I really liked how that was executed. It felt so Rebels. It felt so exactly like how they were written.
I agree. Sabine was so Sabine.
my note about the scene with Sabine plus Thrawn was chef's kiss AF.
Yeah.
It felt very authentically like a continuation of what we've been seeing in the Rebel show. Like, if you didn't watch Ahsoka, Mandalorian, any of the other Star Wars stuff, you just Rebels and then this, God, it's perfect.
Agree.
Sabine gets the poncho. Yes! An important Star Wars tradition. If someone doesn't have a poncho at some point in the Star War, then it's not a Star War. Congratulations, Sabine. You get the poncho wearing plate per plate. Thank you for carrying that baton. I liked her fight scene. It was kind of just there to kind of throw in a little action and inform us that there is another party on this planet.
Yeah, but you know what? It looked really good. It was really cool.
Amazing.
Natasha Liu Bordizzo did an awesome job.
Yeah, not only was the choreography like awesome, it felt informing to the character, like where they're at right now. It's like, I could kill these people. I am good enough after like the last war, after getting good with this lightsaber, but I don't want to. So she only really busts out the lightsaber, and it's just like, yo, I got the lethal thing now. What's just like, you guys just upped it to hard mode. And she still manages not to kill them. And I don't think that was just, you know, because it's Disney and we want to be cute. I feel like that was Sabine being like, I can, not kill you, so I
Yeah.
won't. I'd rather take you alive if I can and find out if you
Yeah.
know anything,
Yeah.
which is super cool because
Yeah.
it worked with the choreography. Super
Super
much
much
worked.
worked. And then we get Space Andy, who's my favorite. I love
Andy,
him.
Space Andy.
Um,
Why do you call it Space
because
Andy?
so for listeners, Andy is my dog, and
Whenever you guys hear that
yeah,
in the background, that is his.
yes,
That is his paws
that's
tapping
exactly
on the ground.
right.
Yeah.
He is our pod dog, and the howler that Sabine is given to ride acts exactly like him, and like there's no difference, and it just made me so happy. I was like, it's Space Andy, and he just like when he like
That's
he
hilarious.
runs off, and then he comes back, and she's like, no, you abandoned me, like get out of here. And he's so ashamed, and he hangs his head down low, and my dog does that same thing, and he gets all, he's like, oh, and he like goes off, and then he like trots back over, and just the way like they clearly
so
modeled
adorable.
him after like all the same mannerisms of just like a dog. After my dog specifically, exactly, just like the way his tongue hangs out and he flips his ears and just like all his little like dog mannerisms. I'm like, it's Andy.
Yeah, the way she like shouted at it and sighed and was like, fine, like has a conversation with it. It felt so Rebels.
Agreed.
It felt so Star Wars. It felt kind of reminiscent of Rebels because in Rebels they ride on these giant Lothal wolves, the Loth wolves, and it had a similar kind of shape and like leaping cadence to that. So it was like a visual nod. I thought,
when we first saw them, before we saw the close up, but it was like an establishing shot on Peridia, and there were 3 of them down in the corner, just like the silhouettes of them, and instantly I was like, oh, Loth wolves. Like I assumed that they weren't, but it had very similar vibe.
I did think about it like a little bit seriously at one point because like the portal of the world between worlds, the Loth wolves kind of played a part in that. They are kind of like a spiritual animal, I think, in this. So maybe this is like this galaxy's counterpart to that, potentially. I don't know.
Yeah.
Rock people. Little turtle rock people.
Yes.
I think it's so great that, of course, they are friends with Ezra. Because, of course, Ezra would make friends with a bunch of rocks. The only thing as dumb as him.
It's true. He finally found his people.
He's finally found his people. Fucking Ezra. And he's a collector too, so he can have a little rock collection. I don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff with that. Ezra, it's like, where's he been all this time? He's just been hiding out under Fraggle Rock with all the Fraggles.
Yeah, I think that these scenes with Baylan and Shin are really, really strong in this episode. We get some really interesting context added, some interesting theme building. He talks about Ezra being a Boken Jedi trained in the wild. I like what he says to Shin when she's like, oh, like me, and he's like, no. He was trained as a Jedi. You are trained to be something more. So I'm still just like really interested in more about like what his philosophy and ideology is and how he trained Shin, because he's clearly got some things that are similar, some things that he's keeping from the Jedi. She's got the Padawan braid. He's keeping some things the same but doing some things differently.
I kind of call him full of shit.
Oh, okay.
Because it's cool that he acknowledges that there is a cycle to be broken. And I don't know what his angle is. That's something yet to be revealed. Looking forward to it. But when he's like, he's a Boken Jedi, trained in the wild, I'm like, oh, cool. They have a concept for it. Makes sense. That was Luke. That was Ezra. A number of other people. But you were not. Yes, she was. She's trained by you. And I don't care if you were Jedi. Luke had Obi-Wan. Ezra had Kanan. They were Jedi first too. There's nothing different. Oh no, we're something better. I'm training you to be something better. Wasn't everybody training everyone to be something better? Obi-Wan's like, yo, I'm training you to be a Jedi, but also you kind of have to be the best because you have to beat Vader. So like, there's no and he's like, you kind of have to be the best because we're trying to break the cycle. Like, shut the fuck up, man. It's like, Get over yourself. You're just trying to win the Olympics 2025 or whatever the next one is. We get it. You know, there'll be better performance. We're going to break the last person's record. Fine. Get over
it's
it.
got
Like, yeah.
it's got big hashtag not like other girls energy.
Yes.
It's like hashtag not like other Jedi.
I like his vibe, but I'm calling him on it. I'm calling him, yeah, you are like other girls.
I really want to know like what he sees as the difference between what he's doing and what the Jedi training entails, I guess.
Yeah. He's like the villain at the end of every TV show where they're just like, look, I've seen thousands of dudes like what is it? The last James Bond movie with Daniel Craig, where they're like, the villain doesn't matter because Bond is just like, you're just another one of the same villains. You've got a base. You've got a modus operandi. You're crazy. You think you're special, but you're not. I'm starting to get that from him, from the way he talks. I'm like, yeah, you're the same. You're the same.
Well, I wanted to talk about Ray Stevenson a little bit because I think that Baylan is such a freaking compelling character, and he's played so well by Ray Stevenson. And he's just like,
yeah, don't get me wrong, the performance is beautiful.
So good, and he
really compelling.
And he's a really complex and really nuanced character, and you can see that in the performance so well, especially in the scenes in this episode where he's, you know, remembering the past, and you can see so much conflict on his face, and he's got, you know, he's remembering like painful things and good things, and he's conflicted, and he's hopeful, but he's not, and he's bitter, but he's, you know what I mean? Like there's so much going on there. And you can really see that on his face and in his voice. Ray Stevenson's death was just such a loss, and I just found myself really wishing that he could have seen the reception of his character and seen this come out, because I've heard nothing but praise about his performance.
It's such a bummer that we don't get more of him, but I guess we really have to appreciate how special this window is, you know? Like, we only have so much Alec Guinness in Star Wars. We only have so much Ray Stevenson in Star Wars. Like, wow. He also mentioned, and I think the last time we see him talking with Shin, he was kind of pointing out, can't you, like, sense it? He was saying something like, they're all trying to get away from this planet. Like, so there's another looming threat that even the bad guys are running from, that's even more powerful for this Peridia, like dawn of this galaxy sort of epic place. He's like, there's another power that he wants to use, so that will have something to do with his plan. But why is it that, one, the Night Sisters are running from it, and I'm wondering this, why can Baylan sense it and nobody else can?
Good questions.
Like, why did he have some, I guess, idea that there would be something like that out there in the galaxy when he still thought Peridia was a ghost story?
Interesting.
Before even embarking on the journey and thinking, this is how I'm going to break the wheel. So there's a lot of questions there. I don't know the answers. As usual, I hope they're good. But that's what's running around my head right now. I'm like, there's something else. There's a third party we don't even know about. And
I wonder if there are hints about it in History of the Galaxy parts 1, 2, and 3 that Hu Yang is telling to Ahsoka, the stories from the archives.
Yeah.
Is that what they were called? Something like that. Because Baylan would have heard those same stories. It was
something like that, yeah.
Baylan would have heard those same stories, and
he's already connected the dots. Yeah.
I wonder if there's something there. Should we talk about reunion?
Yes, let's talk about the reunion. I thought it was perfect.
I also thought it was perfect. I thought it was great.
Yeah, it was a little easy, but in terms of how they talk to each other,
it felt so natural.
It really felt like I was watching the animated characters come to screen again. I totally
agree. The actor playing Ezra, Iman Asfandi, I hope I'm saying that right. Such a good Ezra. I feel like, similar to a lot of the others that we've talked about already, I can really tell that he's done the research and gotten down the speech patterns, the body language. Sounds just like him.
They really nail the character
Totally agree.
adaptations, both of them, so well. And you're going to be so happy to see older and less dumb Ezra played by someone who
I
really gets him,
agree.
I think.
I'm feeling good about it. He has like,
Me too.
really nice smile. He felt so like warm and genuine. And yeah, it felt like, oh yeah, this is grown up Ezra. Like it took me no leap
Yeah.
at all to just like accept that. I was like, yep, nope.
And here he is on another planet just making friends with a bunch of like
Mm-hmm.
rock bugs and like running big puppy space doggies. And I'm just like, it's Star Wars Dr. Doolittle, just,
Yeah, it sounds sounds
Jedi
right.
vet doing his thing. And I'm just like, this is kind of always the happily
Mm-hmm.
ever ending we wanted for Ezra, for him
Mm-hmm.
to just, have a bunch of animals and like nice
Mm-hmm.
little farm and, be patting animals on the head and rocks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That went nowhere. That went absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, a couple other lines that I just wanted to point out from this scene. I like how he's kind of got this moment, they kind of have this like little joking back and forth. He's like, oh, took you long enough. And she's like, well, you didn't exactly tell us where you were going. He's like, and, he's like, well, it worked, didn't it? And then he's like, didn't it? Because he doesn't know what the outcome was. He's been stuck here for what, 10 years, something like that.
Yeah.
So
He doesn't know
I
if they
like that
won.
moment where he's kind of like, like, oh yeah, it worked, didn't it? And then he was like, it did work, right? Like, please tell
That
me
was
it worked.
hilarious. Yeah.
Um,
It's like,
and it just made me think of like, oh man, she's got so much to tell him.
yeah, when he said, I can't wait to go home, and she's just like quiet, I'm like, is she just thinking, surprise, we're kind of
Yeah, I'm
screwed?
just stuck here with you now.
Her plan isn't just to try and race the clock. Like, heads up, we gotta run, or you and me, just weird adopted brother and sister, are just gonna be alone here for a really long time.
When he says, I can't wait to go home, that's a callback to his message at the end of Rebels. The last thing he says in
Yeah.
his message at the end of Rebels is, I can't wait to come home.
Would you like anything done differently in this episode now that we've kind of covered all the beats?
I think the only thing is I would have maybe liked to see it take Sabine a little bit longer to search for Ezra. I kind of felt like Thrawn was like, good luck finding him. He could be anywhere and he's probably dead. And Sabine just like finds him immediately.
Yeah, or even just like a way that she finds him that like makes sense. Like Ezra left something for her to find that Thrawn
Right,
wouldn't,
exactly.
or
That's what.
something of that
Yeah,
nature.
that's what it kind of made me like. Like I want to know what happened.
Instead, it's like first person I talk to that happens to be a rock knows where
Right.
he is. I was like, that's too convenient.
Like
I know you
that's
want to
what
move this
I'm
along, but
wondering.
like insert anything.
It makes me feel like I want to know what happened when Thrawn and Ezra arrived there. Like, did they just like kind of land and go their separate ways and be like, all right, I'm gonna go? I would think that Thrawn would have been trying pretty hard to kill him, but he must not have tried very hard because he was like very easy to find.
Well, maybe he was able to get away because Ezra was friends with the whales at the time, and they
Yeah.
helped him.
Like, I just want to kind of know like how that went down logistically.
Ezra didn't have his lightsaber with him
Right,
or
and then
anything.
like why Thrawn doesn't seem to have made any attempt to find him.
Oh, I think I have the answer to that. So some people, I don't know if this is legit or not, but some people have been saying Ezra's chainmail is made out of stormtrooper dog tags,
Interesting.
which is like, okay, so has he just been slaughtering stormtroopers? Because Thrawn did say when they're like, go after Ezra and them, he's like, our forces are depleted and
That
we
is
need to be
true.
very and I'm like, that's smart.
Mhm.
Very smart. You would not do a stupid move with low
Right.
resources. He's just
Right.
being practical. But also, I would not be surprised if it's just like, yo, it's one Jedi. He can do a lot of damage to like your dudes.
That is a very good point. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I'm willing to buy that.
But also, when people are saying those are stormtrooper dog tags, I'm like, when have you ever seen a stormtrooper dog tag? How did that could be anything?
But yeah, other than that pacing, yeah, I felt like it just happened a little bit quick. I think if we'd had like a night pass and she had to camp out overnight and that was sketchy and just like a little bit more, make it seem like a little bit more of a trial for her to be like on the search for him, I think would have just added a little bit more weight to it, I guess. But that was really my only complaint about the pacing or anything. other than that, I thought everything was perfect.
I think mine is the same because, like I said, the reunion was perfect in terms of how they talked to each other, how they performed
Mm-hmm.
it, how natural it felt. But it all
Mm-hmm.
everything after the moment the reunion happened, I loved. Leading up to it,
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. It was too much
Mm-hmm.
handed to them. It didn't feel
Mm-hmm.
really earned. And I know it's a lot to do in one episode, but like you did commit to this episode to being Sabine finds Ezra this episode, and at the end of it, I felt like it
Mm-hmm.
was a little short. I almost
Mm-hmm.
wanted a little bit more. I was like, oh, if Sabine found him so quickly, something else is going to happen. It's like, nope, this was just a transitionary beat, and I'm like, commit to how difficult that would have been on its own. Like
Right.
10 more minutes of earning finding Ezra in some way would have been great
Mm-hmm.
so that it
Yeah.
because the moment did feel a little smaller to me because there was no like big relief of I don't know how to just put my finger on it, but like it wasn't earned. It just happened.
Mm-hmm.
It was earned in that they waited for years and they had to get all the way over to that freaking galaxy to do it, but
Right. Right. Right.
like that's a whole thing, sure, but I did want to see it earned in the moment too cuz
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's a nitpick.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like I was thinking of like other ways that it could have happened. I don't know that this would necessarily be better or not. It's just like another option would have been that she gets into some sort of like real dire situation and Ezra shows up to save her. You know, if she had been fighting, say, those bandits that she was fighting or something like that, and she's like losing and they're about to kill her, and Ezra comes in and like saves the day. And so it would have been another
Yeah.
possible
And
option.
then there's a
That also
musical
seems
number
like
with
kind of the
all
most obvious.
then there's a musical number with all the rock people around Ezra, and it's like Frozen all over again. And we would have been like, no, not all the bad things. No. Yeah. I think even if you liked Frozen, you didn't like the trolls. No, I'm just kidding. I don't. I'm sure people.
The trolls are definitely the weakest part of.
Okay, good to know. Next episode, I'm open to whatever they do because right now I'm just waiting to see what's Balin's theory. What are they all running from?
Mm-hmm.
What's the bigger power? But also, it's gonna be bomb because
Yeah,
Ahsoka
I'm
versus
super
Thrawn
stoked.
is
It's gonna be amazing.
that's gonna be a cool showdown. Like Ahsoka Thrawn
Mm-hmm.
Bowl, yeah, Ahsoka Thrawn
Yes,
Bowl.
yes to that. My prediction is that Balin and Shin are gonna have to team up with Sabine and Ezra and Ahsoka. Those stormtroopers gonna be coming after him. Thrawn has made it clear that he does not care if Balin and Shin make it off his planet or not. And I think that they're all gonna end up having to team up, which I think is gonna be really awesome.
Yeah.
It also seems like the sort of inevitability that Thrawn would have foreseen, so I'm not really sure why he's not concerned about that. But
yeah.
Another question that I have is what is all the cargo that Thrawn is transferring onto the Chimera?
I wasn't even thinking about that.
Yeah, he's got all this stuff. They're like, oh, the catacombs are full of all this stuff. It's going to take us 3 rotations to transfer it all. So, like, what is it?
He could not be a light packer. You know, he could just be like
I guess so.
a princess.
It's all his nice pressed white admiral suits.
Yeah, it's all. One of the suitcases is circular. It'll never be explained why. You know, like things like that. Yeah, it's that trope.
Like, it could just be like resources from the planet. It could be all this gold that they seem to have in so much abundance that he's going to come back and like rebuild the empire with. I don't know if the Night Sisters would have been super amenable to him just like pillaging all the resources of this planet, but if they're trying to get out of Dodge anyway, I guess maybe they don't care. So I can't really think of it. I don't know what else it would be. There's a theory that I think makes a lot of sense, that all the stormtroopers in his legion there are all dead and resurrected by Night Sisters magic, like Marok, which would make sense. You know, all their armor's all destroyed and everything. They're pretty beat up. It would kind of make sense that if that happened, he did say, you know, that their numbers were dwindling. I don't know if that's, you know, they could have been resurrecting some of them, not all of them. I also know, I don't know if you watch it with subtitles, but in the subtitles they call them night troopers, so that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that's what's up.
I think that's what's up too.
Okay. How do you advert Peridia if you were a travel agent? What's your strategy?
Okay.
How are you going about it? What's the angle? This
All
is
right,
silly
here's my
question
angle.
time, in case anybody didn't pick up. We are in silly questionville now.
Silly question, Phil. All right, here's my angle. So, I just got back from a country far, far away, and one of the things that I really enjoyed was just being like off the grid, like totally unplugged from everything. I didn't have Wi-Fi most of the time. It was kind of really great. So I think that my angle for advertising Peridia as a travel destination would be like, escape to a galaxy far, far away and let all your worries fall away. Like, when will the laundry get done? How will the bills get paid? Am I ever going to get back home? Will my loved ones ever be able to find me? None of it matters when you're here on Peridia. Graveyard to the star whales.
Very tranquil. Very tranquil.
Yeah, thank you.
Mine, I just went sarcastic dark tourism. So, I'm just going to go through it sarcastically beat by beat. Hey, do you want to get away from your mundane life and go to a planet that's currently ruled by an evil, dictator of the Galactic Empire? In the meantime, once you land, you'll be able to be sent on a quest. While you're on that quest, for God knows why, you'll be attacked by brigands and monsters and little rock creatures. But then you'll find your friend. Yeah! What comes next in this immersive experience of dark tourism? Who knows?
Stop. I'm so glad that you're across the country, because that voice makes me want to punch you in the face.
That's the idea.
So
That's
hard.
advert voice. Have you ever?
Well, you did it.
Have you ever seen?
It was effective.
Sock and boppers. More fun than a pillow fight.
You're totally right. You nailed it.
That's what that voice is. It's a commercial for all the things you hate.
You're 100% right.
Yeah. Come to Columbus, Ohio. There's nothing here. Sorry, Columbus, Ohio. But there's nothing here. But you should come here and explore all of our museums. Wait, they actually do have a cool one. Is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Columbus, Ohio? I'm looking it up. It's in Cleveland. But come to Columbus, Ohio, where we don't have really anything but like a bridge and some roads. Yeah, okay.
It's really the most punchable voice.
Yeah.
If I could punch you in the voice, I would.
That voice is perpetually wearing frosted tips and sunglasses, and just overall has the vibe of Kid Viz from Burger King in the 90s.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Imagery that only 90s kids will remember.
Wow.
That's our show. Thanks for listening.
Show,
we're sorry you're going to be listening to these back to back, but we're so excited for tomorrow, and we'll see how fast I can edit this one. So, yeah.
We'll try and get this one's not going to come out before the next episode airs.
Probably not.
We'll just be dropping them both this week at some point.
I'm going to race the clock, but it's unlikely. Yeah.
Well, you know what? We'll just post it whenever we get it done at whenever it's ready. So
you know it. Bye.
So that's our whole thing. Bye.
Bye.